lovely to see you all here today for the second phase. Isn't it wonderful? Absolutely wonderful. So we've got to survive this, haven't we, by maintaining health. So Dr. Joey's going to lead us into all this. I'm sure you all were here for November, or a lot of you were here for the talk in November, weren't you? Weren't you? Well, you missed a treat, you really did. So you'll have to catch up tonight. Absolutely wonderful. So all I can say is just sit back, relax and enjoy it. Make any input. I'm sure Joe will be delighted, won't you, Joe?
I will, thanks very much.
All right, Joe, you carry on. Thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone, nice to see you all. Surviving the great shift of 2012 phase 2. What I've done is some people have asked me because they didn't come to the first talk. And I could keep some of the slides in from the first talk and quickly go over them to bring us up to date and stuff like that. So I've done that. But just let's see what it's about. If we can, any questions, what we'll do is, it's just gone 7:30, so I'll go on to about, I do go on, but I'll go on to about 8:30. We'll have a quarter of an hour break, and then we'll come back and we'll do some more stuff. How's that sound? Yeah. So any questions, you could just kindly leave them till the end of the first session, and I'll try my best to answer them if I can. But this is basically what it's all about, the great shift of 2012. I'm going to try and explain what I think I understand about it. And I'm sure there's people in the audience who are far more qualified in certain areas, but if that's the case, then maybe we could talk about it afterwards and build something better. I think that's what we're going to do. But just to say thank you to the church, and thank you to the committee members for inviting me along. And it's got a special place in my heart here because I've learned a lot, and I continue to learn a lot from what goes on in the church, and sometimes I can't explain it because there's a lot of stuff goes on. I just sort of feel things, and I think I wonder what that means. And then about a week later, it all starts to drop into place. I don't know if anybody else finds it works like that. But the sort of the theme of my life at the moment is the opposite of this, you know, because there seems to be such a lot going on at the moment that people are depressed, miserable, anxious, and all those sorts of things, stressed, and worried. Sorry, yeah. Does anybody know what this depicts? Yeah, it's the scales of justice. The ancient Egyptians used to believe that when you died, you whipped all your organs out except your heart, and then they sent you down to the underworld, and your heart was taken out in the underworld and was placed on the scales of justice, and they weighed it against. Any idea what they weighed it against? A feather. A feather. And if your heart was lighter than a feather, you could stay in heaven because you'd passed the test and you'd become a fully formed human. And if it was heavier than a feather, then they recycled you to do it all again, you know. So my thing now really is about light-heartedness, and it gets me into trouble all the time, you know, because I feel that we live in such a miserable world where people are so depressed and stuff, that sometimes light-heartedness is seen as not being responsible. But, you know, hey, what can you do? You know? So I certainly don't mean to offend anybody or cause trouble, but as soon as I open my mouth, it happens, you know, so you can talk to me later if I offend you. Okay, so just to explain who I am, I've got these qualifications. This is my science side, if you like. I've got a PhD in medicine. I'm not a doctor of medicine, I'm a doctor in medicine, so that means I'm far more qualified than most of the doctors of medicine. And I say that to them as well, and we don't like it. They think I'm not a proper doctor, but I know that I am. So my PhD was to do with the way stress and relaxation affects the heart. And it was really about the heart and blood pressure and how people felt under stress. And simple, non-medical interventions to overcome stress and stuff like that. So, so that was my PhD. I'm a principal lecturer in advanced integrative health practice. It's a posh name for relaxation studies. I'm a senior research fellow, I was in medicine, so I was all these things, so I'm dead clever really. Right. And, I was the UK's first NHS specialist in integrative health practice. They didn't really know what it was, but they just signed the form and I just carried on. I used to have a clinic in Arrow Park and Clatterbridge Hospital for about 5 years, where patients used to come and see me, and we used to just tell jokes and you know, relax and stuff like that. You know. And they'd either leave the office crying, right, or they'd leave laughing, you know, and nobody could work out what was going on behind the closed doors. But I'm going to explain some of it tonight. So what else am I? I'm a member of the International Complexity Network, and that just means really trying to find out what it's all about, and this 2012 thing comes into it. The other side of me is I'm a fellow of the Institute of Health, Fitness and Sports Therapists, I teach massage therapy, Indian head massage, meditation. Dave and I do Tai Chi, Qigong, and we do all those sort of flowing energy things. So we may even show you some of that later on. And I'm a spiritual healer with the Lancashire and District Healers Association. I'm a member of the Dr. Healing. This is all about me. I love this bit. I'll carry on. This could be the whole talk tonight. All about me, you know. It's me-ism, you know. I, self, and me. I, self, and me. Yeah. And apparently now, I've been upgraded recently to a Reiki Grandmaster. I don't know if you've ever met a Reiki Grandmaster before, but I'm one. Right. Can you feel it? Can you feel the force? I'm a stress management trainer. And the most important thing is this. This is the most important. I'm an ex-drunk. And that's the most important thing out of those 2 pages. Because it was going through that process that's led me to who I've become today, really. And just for those who don't know me, I spent 15 years basically trying to kill myself with drink and pills and all sorts of things. Because I didn't understand what was going on, you know. I just didn't seem to fit into the world. And I didn't seem to fit in when I was a kid, and I didn't seem to fit in when I was growing up as well. And Krishnamurti says, it's no sign of whole health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And when I worked out what he was going on about, that was me. I was always trying to fit into a society that I was never going to belong to, you know. And so I've realised today that I don't have to fit in anywhere. I just have to fit in with myself, you know. And then the basis of the talk tonight really is about helping you to find yourself, because that's where your true strength is, and that will help you to be more comfortable in possibly the times that are coming up, you know, because it does look like the chaos may be going to get worse. And I don't mean to fear more or anything like that, and I could be completely wrong. Whatever you do, please don't believe a single word I say tonight. Don't. Go away, sit with the information, right, and if it makes sense to you and it rings true, then maybe look a bit deeper. And if it doesn't, and it doesn't make sense, just cast it off, because if it's true, it'll come back again, you know. Because that's the way it seems to work. The truth will always return, and the truth will set you free, and that's my understanding of it. So what happened is, in the drink thing, because I always felt uncomfortable, because I was always afraid, because I was always anxious, I couldn't face every day. I used to wake up and think, I just can't carry on today. The only thing that got me through that, really, was to get as drunk as a skunk, you know. And then the drink got hold of me, and I went into a hell of a mess. I became very, very ill. I upset a lot of people. I upset myself, you know. I was in a right mess, really. And at the end of the drinking, I did have a phase where the drinking did stop, and I did actually get a big sort of a wake-up call. But because I didn't practice what was taught to me, it closed down again, and I had to go back to learn a few more lessons, you know. So at the end of the drinking, I took 150 paracetamol, and some sleeping tablets, and a bit of aspirin as well in case you got a headache. And I should never have a headache now for the rest of my life. But on the day that I decided to do it, because I just couldn't live the way I was going, you know, and I reintroduced myself back to God. And, you know, I'm not sure what God is, but I know what God feels like, you know, that's the thing, really. I don't put a label on it now if I can help it. But I knelt down by the settee, you know, and I was drunk. And I just said to God at the time, I said, look, God, I'm sorry about this, but I've tried to do my best, and I just don't seem to be able to stop, you know. Do us a favour, can you just, like, let me go to sleep and let that be the end of it, you know. I feel sad talking about it now, but I got such a feeling of peace came over me, and I thought, thank goodness for that, it's happening, you know. And I felt really, really calm. I think it was the peace that passeth all understanding, and I thought, thank goodness for that. I've got some peace, it's all over, you know. And about 2 minutes later, or it felt like 2 minutes later, I started to get this massive epileptic fit, and I was fitting all over the place. And I thought, God, I can't live properly. I can't die properly. This is awfully tricky, you know. So anyway, I crawled to the telephone box, rang 999, and I was back again. It's like I was back in the short stay ward with all sorts of charcoal drips in and stuff like that. And then for some unknown reason, he carted me back to the psychiatric department, you know. And then everything started to tumble into place then, right? I started to understand, and something started to open up. And as it happened, Alcoholics Anonymous used to meet in the Clatsbridge Hospital. I went back, because I'd been to AA before. I went back, was reintroduced to the people who I know and love, you know, and my recovery started from there. So my recovery is not really about alcoholism. I think it's about recovering the soul. You know, so I'm going to talk about soul recovery today. So what was potentially a horrible story became quite a good story in the end. And you now see the magnificent product of all this. So, and this is what they told me in AA. They said to me, they showed me that because my thinking wasn't really my thinking, and I'll explain this as I go along, they showed me that because I was really living everybody else's life, right, I was completely out of touch with who I really was. Some of you will understand this, you know. But I wasn't being true to myself. I was being dishonest with myself. I didn't know this. I was very naive. But I was the sort of person who in the job I was very successful because I can retain facts, you know, and I could regurgitate facts. I was like a walking library, if you like, you know. I could remember facts about the job, but about myself, I didn't have a clue. And so they showed me that what I needed to do was, in their experience, because it had worked for them, is to hand my will and my life over to the care of the universe or God or spirit or whatever, and see what happens. And I did this. I knelt down with somebody who's called the sponsor, and I said this prayer, you know, and I haven't had a drink since, and my whole life's been transformed by it, you know. So it's a good story, really. I'm not a religious person. I don't follow a religion anymore. But I do believe that there's something much bigger going on, you know. And I'm not trying to shove any beliefs down, you know. Please just make your own mind up on what's going to be said tonight. Because my belief is that we've all got the secrets of how we should live within us, and not out there at all, you know. I spent all my life asking experts on how, including my mother, you know, how should I live my life, you know, what should I eat, where should I go, what job should I do, and all that. I couldn't make my own mind up about anything, and I realised today that I just need to turn my attention this way. Is that okay? So there's an update on where it goes. So there's the prayer. Just to say, you know, God, I offer myself today to build with me. So, you know, it's a positive thing, this. You know, I was saying, I really don't know what to do here, so he gives a clue, basically. And that's how I pray. My feeling about what God is in here. It's my intuition. It's my spiritual self. This is, and I'll try and be honest, you know. And I say, God to me isn't the Almighty, it's my old matey. Do you know what I mean? You know, somebody said to me once, God is no matey, he's almighty, and I thought, I don't like that, you know, because I was brought up with all that very strict stuff, and I can't bear it anymore now, you know. So my higher power, if you like, or my spiritual self, is my friend, you know, and I talk to it like a friend, and I say, what are we up to today? What have you got planned for us today? And that's basically what I do every morning. I wake up and say, okay, before you open your eyes, it says, open your heart, you know. So I open my heart and I say, morning, wake up, you know. What's on the cards today? And I try and get an impression of what's to be done, and I sort of go with that. You know. Anyway, there you go. That's the introduction. The session outline is we look at the last 6 months. What is a shift, that says? Signs and symptoms of a paradigm shift. Staying centered and grounded. Some tricks of the trade. I don't know how to go so slow, but. And the end of times. Excuse me. Just let's start off. There's some of you seeing this, some of you haven't. Just look at her and put your hand up if she's turning in a clockwise direction. Okay, put your hands down and turn your hand, put your hands up if she's turning in an anti-clockwise direction. Halfy, Dave, would you say? Halfy? Changing, yeah, that's because you're already enlightened. But how come some of you are seeing it going one way and some of you are seeing it going another way? How does that work? Say again? It's an optical illusion, but what's actually happening is it's a test to demonstrate which side of your brain you process information on. If she's turning clockwise, and she will change. But it's the initial impression, right? The initial impression, if you saw her going clockwise, right, then you process information in the right side of your brain. That's the holistic side of your brain. If you see her going anti-clockwise, it means that you process information with the left-hand side of your brain, which is your linear side of your brain. Most men are linear processors. That means they can only do one thing at a time. Girls, would you agree with that? Yes. Most women, or the feminine side of the brain, which is the right-hand side of the brain, sees the big picture. That's why you can't lie to your mother, or you can't lie to partners and stuff like that. because they know, you know what I mean? So we're a bit stuck as men, because we always get found out what's going on. But it's important, this is, because sometimes just a simple change of perception can open everything up. Because the true picture is to use both your right and your left-hand side of the brain in a harmonic way, in a harmony way. And I'm going to show you tonight how we can do that. So that's, you can get it off the internet. It's, if you just put in dancing woman who's twirling around for the left and Google that, I'm sure that you'll find it. But there's obviously, let's get back to end times. What are we here for? 2012 has been described by many, many indigenous tribes and prophesied as being the end of times. You know, and that means different things to different people. It's a different interpretation for many, many people. But many people now are basing what they feel is going to happen on the Mayan prophecies. And as far as I know, I don't think that the Mayans actually prophesied anything really. I just think that they explained that up to the way they look at calendars, it's very cyclical events, they actually observed, they had the time to sit, to meditate and observe natural cycles. And they felt the way they worked is that they were coming up to what's called the end of the fifth human time. And as far as I understand it was that this human species as we are now is going to change, right? And there may possibly be an evolution into the next stage of human development. That's where I understand it. Different people have different opinions. Some people think it's going to be the end of the world. It may well be. I don't feel like myself, but you know, I don't know, right? Some people feel there's going to be a big shift in consciousness and everybody will be happy and ecstatic. You know, some people feel that there's going to be all sorts of aliens coming in. I don't know, but I'm going to cover some of these things. I don't know. I have to say, I really, really don't know. But I'm going to show you why it's not important, in my opinion, to know or not to know. But it seems that no aspect of the world will be left untouched. You know, there's physical, emotional, mental, and all sorts of spiritual things appearing to be going on. There's things happening, apparently, in dimensions that we're not aware of, which are affecting the physical, emotional, mental makeup of people. And I'm going to try and explain how I feel that works, you know. It's called, if you like, that what happens in the spiritual dimensions, or the etheric formative forces, they're called, very posh names, that there's actually stuff going on in dimensions that we can't see, but a lot of us can feel, right? They're actually affecting the way we think down here. And it's more to do with that than anything that's going on by humans on the planet itself. That it's actually happening on a much, much deeper level or higher level in the cosmos, if you like. So some people feel that we're going to ascend, and by that I think we're going to leap, we're going to have this what they call a quantum leap in consciousness, and we're all going to be happy and love one another. I don't think, I mean, it'd be nice if it happens like that. I can't feel it's going to happen like that. But I do feel that the wave has been coming in and getting stronger for quite a long time now. And maybe 2012, December the 21st, 2012, is the peak of it really. That's the way I feel. The crescendo will happen maybe around then. But I don't know. And maybe some different people have different opinions. So how long have we got left? Oh, I should have this connected to the internet. But we've got, from now to 2012, whatever. Right. So this milestone in time promises to be more than just imaginative or metaphorical. That means not really storytelling anymore, not made up by imagination. A lot of people who have studied this feel that they can't quite put their hands on it or get their heads around it, but they sense that something's going on. Do you feel that may be happening? And you know, you're here tonight. And I don't know. You know, I have a sense that more and more time seems to be quickening. Well, that's actually, I don't think it's time that's quickening, because time remains the same, but the amount of data and information that's coming in time is definitely increasing all the time, right? And sometimes they say, as within, so without. If we look at the processing that's going on within the human, we can actually see how the internet's building as well, and how the information that's pouring into the internet is reflecting maybe more information that's coming in from the cosmos. That's how I see it. You know. So it's not really about time quickening up. It's about the way we process this information, and that becomes more important as we go on through this talk. How can we improve our processing of all this information that's coming in? How do we know what's true and what's false? How do we work that out? You know, do we have to ask experts, or is there some way in ourselves that we can facilitate or make more refined our BS detector. I won't explain what that is, because we're in the church, you know, but I'll just say lie detector. How can we tell what the truth is? There's a belief that as the sun's energies, there's an increase now in solar explosions, if you like, or solar flares, or solar impulses. And this has been backed up by astronomy, which is the science of the cosmos, if you like, so scientists. But astrologists have also been saying that as the sun gets stronger, if you like, and comes more into a central position, then the energies are more flourishing, and it will change consciousness as we move from the age of Aquarius into Pisces, and we seem to be on that. A lot of people thought it was going to happen on 2000, because it would have been happening, wouldn't it, you know, 2000, got 3 zeros, let's have it tonight. But the big thing about it is the Mayans worked with biological cycles. They didn't work with any sort of cosy calendar, really, you know. The most important thing about tonight is it's to try and get the information that comes in, but not to try and get it to fit your picture of how it's going to work out, because that happens a lot. We take information and we try and fit it to our template. I think that that's the wrong way around, you know, but I'll explain more as we go on. Economists are concerned about the recent shifts in the world's economies, and like the physicists, they haven't got a clue what's going on either, you know. I think a lot of people think that there's some sort of underlying scheme, you know, some sort of eugenics agenda and stuff like this, and there may well be, right, but I'm not going to cover that tonight. But there seems to be some sort of elite agenda where we're trying to just pare down the population of the earth so we can just keep the good Aryan ones, you know, and we can go forward as a master race. There's all that stuff that's coming to the surface now. And what I actually believe that's happening is that it's a reflection really about what's going on within individuals. And I think sometimes the trap is when we go out of ourselves and continue fighting, we've misunderstood that the problems within us are not outside of us. You know. So we look at this as well. Lots of visionaries feel as well that this shift will take us into the next level of human development, where we actually move away from the human ego and we move up into the spiritual dimension now. And I do feel that that's actually happening now, that we're going to get an expanded consciousness and we're going to see things clearly. And that seems to be happening. I don't know if anybody else feels that, but as we go along and we relax, it's almost like your glasses become more expanded and you can say, oh God, right, I see what's happening now. Yeah. So to me, this is not about fighting, it's about sitting back really and observing the play. And I know some of the things that are going on at the physical level are horrendous, but sometimes if you step back, you get a much bigger picture and a better idea of it, and you can be much more relaxed with what's going on. Almost if it's sort of God's play, really. You know. Just a bit too heavy, isn't it? All right. Okay. I'm saying that, I'm saying, God, really smiling, but right. So in 2012, it's no longer a topic reserved for the Mayans. The Hopi tribe, they gave revelations about what was coming up in these end times. You know, the return of rainbow warriors, that's where that phrase comes from. Indigo children, star seeds, all these things, you know. They're very, very interested in these, and I've spent a lot of time looking at this stuff. But the underlying theme seems to be that there's a lot of stuff going on, right? And there must be a reason for it, you know. And I think I'm not a doom and gloom merchant, but I don't feel that we're going to get away lightly, to be honest with you, because I do think that it's really our responsibility. We've made the mess, and we're going to, in some way, all have to get together here to clean the mess up, you know. I heard the phrase, no one's got nothing to do, and I had to work that out. And it means that everybody's got something to do. You know. We've all got, at an individual level, a unique level, we've all got a job to do, and we're all like a key. And I do see that. At the level of the soul, and I'll try and explain what that means later, that we're all unique. I like the phrase collective individuality because it means that everybody's working together, but as themselves, rather than part of some sort of cloning system or matrix or ball or something like that, you know. I think the material world wants us to be all standardised and working together and doing the same thing, you see. But I think the world of the spirit wants us to be our unique individual soul selves. Does that make sense? I'm going to show you how to get in touch with your soul. Well, here's some of the theories. Galactic realignment. Most astronomers don't believe that. And I think a lot of people felt that all the planets were going to get into a straight line and it was going to be like that. I don't feel it's like that at all, actually. I feel that it's the forces of the planets that align. Right? A pole shift The Mayans felt that every 26,000 years there was a big shift anyway. And what actually happens is called the precession equinoxes. Right? The planet wobbles a bit, and it's quite a natural thing for the magnetic poles to shift slightly. But with that shift comes all sorts of geomagnetic shifts in the Earth's plates and stuff like that. So this is it's not as though this hasn't happened before. It has happened before, and it's due to happen again, and it's round about the time when it's all starting. Okay, Earth changes, I've mentioned that. Solar maximums, all these different sorts of things. But some physicists and astronomers are focusing on what I've just talked about, really. And it's also been shown that the planets are changing as well. So it's almost as if, as the sun changes its position and becomes more centralised, the energies ramp up, if you like, and also whiz through all the planets, including Earth, and cause changes in all the planets as well. And this can be corresponded to or correlated with the chakras of the human body. You're familiar with chakras? There's a picture of the chakras there. And I'm going to spend a bit of time in the second half showing you simple techniques to realign chakras. So there's the realignment. It isn't going to happen like that in a straight line. And this is basically just, this rotation on axis. The Mayans and all these ancient tribes, they had plenty of time to study the natural cycles of the planets and the stars and stuff like that. So they're well tuned in to biorhythms and all those different sorts of things. Something that we've possibly lost completely in our supposed civilized state. Because I think we should be called an uncivilized society now, civilized. People seem to be getting less time now to spend time with each other, less time to be sociable. We're just becoming a race now, I suppose, isn't it? And I've mentioned that already. So the way I feel it really, or sense it, or see it if you like, is that there are big changes taking place both in the physical body, and that's what I'm going to concentrate on tonight, the personal level. There's also stuff happening on the planet as well, because it's also felt that the planet Earth is also going to undergo an evolutionary change as well, when it moves from its own third chakra to a fourth chakra. We're supposed to be moving from the third chakra, which is the top of the human intellect, into the spiritual dimension of the heart. So we're moving from third to fourth as well. So is the planet Earth, right? And with that will come a complete change. The way I see it is that I think David Icke calls it a truth vibration. That as these cosmic energies ramp up, what actually happens, because it's the truth vibration, it's like a tsunami of love, I call it. It's like the tide, the clothes thing, that cleans clothes. I see the same sort of thing coming in, really. And what's actually happening is that as this truth vibration comes in, anything that's not truth gets washed up onto the surface. And that also means the stuff that we've pushed down in us as well. And lots of people don't like that because they start to feel emotionally disturbed. And then they use all their resources and all sorts of drugs and all sorts of drink and cigarettes and all sorts of amphetamines and coke. They use all that stuff to try and gain some energy to push it down again. And they're going to lose, I'm afraid, because as the truth vibration gets stronger, all this stuff's going to come to the surface, right? So if you've been fibbing and lying and all that, be careful. Start telling the truth now, because if you don't, it's going to get much more painful as you go on. So maybe that's going to happen at the level of politics as well. And maybe what we're seeing around the globe is as a consequence of this truth vibration getting close to us. I don't know. No, I do know. I know that that's the truth. But don't believe a single word I say. And there's the precession of equinoxes on the Earth's body. And it's quite complicated to understand, but nothing to bother about. Some people think, and I don't know when this is going to happen. If this happens, if we get a complete magnetic reversal of the poles, then, you might as well, just, enjoy it. Enjoy Ascension and go out with a bang and a smile and get off my guys. Okay, so there's the cosmic irradiation increasing, getting closer. And I've put some science in here as well to try and explain how I see this works. And we're experiencing one crisis after another. Recently, from the talk I did in November, I suggested that this may be happening, that as this truth vibration gets closer, what actually happens is the power of the mind is diminished, because this is where the trouble is here. The conflict happens because this has only got there to go, we can't work anything out. We need a different way out. And I think what's actually happening is It's the heart vibrations actually opening up and bringing the truth with it, you know. And if this is the centre of love, and if love releases everything, then I like it. It seems nice, you know. And I'm going to explain a bit more about that. But there's been earthquakes in Haiti, Chile, China, Sumatra, and then recently, obviously, big ones in Japan, New Zealand, Spain, you know. So there seems to be earthquakes happening now with more frequency. Now, that may be because we can detect them more now, right? It's not necessarily that there's more earthquakes, and I'll show you the graph in a minute. There's only really been, over the last 20 years, a slight increase in earthquakes, but there's been a much, much bigger increase in natural disasters in general. So I'll show you this as we go along. But there's been heat waves in Russia. There's certainly climate change happening, but I don't really feel that it's anything to do with the human condition, you know. If you're spraying too much stuff under your arms, you know, I don't think you're responsible for these tornadoes that are going on. You know. But some maybe unscrupulous authorities may sort of want you to think that for various reasons, but I'm not going there tonight. You know. But civil unrest, financial meltdown, global systems collapse. Do you feel that this may be happening? Yeah. There's a phrase that says you're only as sick as your secrets. So in a way, if your secrets come out and you can accept them, you can say, yes, I've done this, then you'll be released from it. Easy as that. You know. Nobody's going to get away with any karmic debt. It's not going to be wiped out. You can't just let go of karma and get away with it. You just have to say, yes, it's true. I accept it. I've done this, you see. That's all part of the learning process. You know. Because I think a lot of people think that this wave's going to come in, they're going to be free. So they might as well do what they like now, because they're going to get let off with it. I don't think it works like that, although it could be wrong. In a government report recently, Paddy Ashton, this is a UK government, and this is on the website, this. The UK government are getting involved with prophecies as well, and he feels, this is what Lord Ashton said, there's going to be an increase in natural disasters. The scale, frequency and severity of rapid onset humanitarian disasters will continue to grow. So he's actually saying this. I don't know where he's getting his information from, but they've predicted where in the world that earthquakes will happen. I find that brilliant. I mean, how do we do that? You know. So there's some of the areas where the UK government is predicting there'll be all these natural disasters occurring. I don't know why, but there seems to be a lot in third world countries and stuff like that, you know. But maybe something to look at that and think a bit more deeply about. Right. There we go. There's a chart that I've recently acquired to show that over the last 20 years there's been quite a sort of exponential rise in all sorts of natural disasters. But here as well, it seems that it's floods and cyclones that seem to be the most important thing, you know, they're the ones that are happening. Earthquakes are easy to see, but these build up from nothing really. There's some people believe that certain instruments can be used to actually alter weather patterns and stuff like that, you know. And I've looked deeply into this, and it's very possible. And I'm not going to get into that tonight, because all I'm here really is to help you with finding out the truth. You know, you have to look, in my opinion, right, you have to take the information in, allow it to sit in your heart, and say to your heart, if you like, is this true or false? Is there anything that I need to take action on here? Right? And if you get the push to do something, then do it. And if you don't, then don't. You know what I mean? But I'll explain more as we go. So, what is a shift? Shift happens. I didn't make that up, So, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, a shift is defined as a change in position, direction or tendency. It's almost like turning the other cheek to look in a different direction. So a paradigm shift, you may have heard that. What a paradigm shift is a shift in consciousness. And that's what many of the spiritual teachers and leaders and religious people feel that what's actually happening is, because of this universal change and cosmic change, what's actually happening is that there'll be a consciousness change happening in all individuals on the planet. And as I've just explained before, if consciousness changes, that means thinking changes. If thinking changes, your actions change because your choices change. Is that okay? And they do say, thoughts become things, so have good ones. You know what I mean? So I think personally that at one level, this is all about evolving consciousness. It's about us understanding just how responsible we are for the thinking that we have and the actions that we take. Yeah. So a paradigm shift then is described as a radical change. So it's a big shift in the way we think. And it's one that we didn't know we were going to have, you know. So you can be fighting against it 1 minute and think, oh, hang on a second, it's true. And that's what happened to me. When I got told 9 years before I stopped drinking that it was the way I was thinking that was causing me problems. And my thinking didn't want that. My ego wouldn't allow that. And really what had to happen is I had to go back out and experience more of life and my thinking and my choices just to prove that my actions were the wrong way around, really. Because I was basically an egomaniac, right? And egocentricity brings with it all sorts of tensions, you know. But I didn't understand this, you know. I let myself off the hook now. But the idea is that by handing me will and my life over, what I feel happens is that I allow a bigger part of myself, if you like, or a higher power, or my authentic self, to guide me path forward. And in the last 20 years, I've done that every morning, right? And my life's just been transformed totally, you know. And that's what I'm trying to pass that on tonight, really, that I didn't understand, but when I went through the process, right, it's actually just changed everything, really. And there's the tsunami of love, you know, the tide of change. I used to think, you see, in my egocentricity and arrogance, that I could stand on the shore and say to the wave, just go round, would you? You know what I mean? You know, and that is, it's idiotic, I know, but that's, I felt that I was in charge totally of my whole destiny, and I see this just a load of nonsense now, you know. I was just misinformed, I was naive, I was arrogant, I was fearful and all those things. Some people think I haven't changed at all. And maybe that's true, but I feel better about it, you know. But what they do is, in the pathway of recovery that I'm on, what you actually do is you sit down and you turn your glasses on and put them the other way around, and you just look at your actions throughout the lifetime. And I look at my resentments, people who'd hurt me in the past, people that I'd hurt. And what you do is you make a whole list out of people that you've hurt, and you go and find them and say sorry, right? Because that's calling clearing the channel. I'm not suggesting that everybody here has to do that, but I'm suggesting that what I did was I had to go and do that just to knock my pride down a few pegs and stuff like that, you know. So before humility, not only comes emotional turmoil, right, but humiliation as well, you know. But I think you sort of have to go through that just to say that you're willing, right, to take on board this other thing. I don't know if that makes sense, but so everything's connected. There's some great pictures on Google and stuff like that. Some get into trouble looking, but so some people believe that 2012, it's also the second coming of Christ, you know. And I think that a lot of these things, we're saying the same things, but we're maybe using different expressions, you know. And we fight over the expressions that we use. We fight over the way that we describe it. We put a label onto something that we can't really understand, and then we start fighting over, you've got the wrong label on, mine's better than yours. Do you know what I mean? So I think, well, probably lots of us are saying the same thing. And maybe if we went with the sentiment and the feeling behind it, it would be really. But the second coming, I do believe that the cosmic Christ, meaning the sun, meaning the symbol of love and healing, I do believe that that's actually what's happening. You know. Apocalypse means the lifting of the veil. And I do believe that the veil between the two worlds, the material world and the spiritual world, I think it's diminishing. The end of the world, some people believe that Armageddon is actually happening in the spiritual dimensions, and that there's all sorts of fallen angels coming back and stuff like that. I don't know whether that's happening, you know, but I'll show you some pictures in a minute. The dimensional shift, Earth chakra resetting, the zero point theory, all different ways to explain the same thing, I think. I found this today, actually. And I'm not, I've never met Jesus, but by all accounts, he seemed like a decent fellow. You know, I think he was a bit of a rebel, so I have a bit of a vibration with him. I think he's all right. You know, and I do sometimes say, Jesus, are you busy? You know, right? Give us a clue what's going on. You know, and I have a sense that Jesus was a symbol of the Christ, which is a symbol of healing, which is a symbol of truth, which is a symbol of all that. You know, so I do talk to Jesus sometimes, but I do talk to all the masters who've gone before. I don't know whether by doing that I'm back on the way to the psychiatric department, you know, but I feel okay about it, you know. But Jesus said that he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately. Tell us, they said, when this will happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age. So it's in the Bible, apparently. Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you. You know, so that's more or less what I've been saying is, there's going to be a lot of misinformation coming up. disinformation, loads of information. How can you tell what's true and how can you tell what's false? And I'll show you how you can develop your lie detector as we go along in a minute. Right. Many will come and claim, I am the Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumours of wars, right? But the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, earthquakes in various places. It's the last line that's important. All these are the beginning of birth pains. You know, so that there suggests to me that what's actually happening is a natural process. It's a spiral process of evolution that the planet's going through and that the human race is going through. And there's the Earth as well. It's believed that as the cosmic rays come closer and the vibration quickens, what's actually happening is it's causing all this geomagnetic stress. The geomagnetic stress actually impacts upon us then. But it's thought that the Earth will go through an evolution as well, and the third chakra will then diminish the energy, and the fourth chakra will open up in Glastonbury. And I've already booked my room. If December the 21st in Glastonbury, or I think maybe Avebury, I don't know. But I was down there a couple of weeks ago, right? Because I just got this sense of, I went for a run in Stonehenge, I did a half marathon on a Sunday, and I thought, well, I'll go early and pop down to Glastonbury, you know. So while I was looking at the site, I saw this soul retuning centre. I thought, that sounds good, that would go right, you know. So I've got these soul retunes, going better than my car now. It's very funny, you know, because I do believe that the spiritual dimension gives you clues all the time, because I've been having trouble with my car for ages, and this is how I work. I always try and go for the cheapest option. You know what I mean? It's always the dearest option in the end, because I was getting the sense of, take it back to the main dealer, you know, the creator. Go back to the main dealer, and they'll put it right. Well, I spent thousands of pounds on it, right? And in the end, I thought, well, I'll take it back to the right. £85 it cost. They had it fixed in 20 minutes, and they did it. They cleaned it inside and out as well. You know what I mean? So I was getting the information all the time, but my ego was coming in because I was afraid about how much it was going to cost. See what I'm saying is, the ego's still there like a shadow hanging over your shoulder, but it works on fear and insecurity and all that sort of business. You know? And I was getting a clear message: go back to the Creator. So yeah, the Earth thing, and Glastonbury, I went into this soul retuning centre. It was called Metatronics. It was called, and I'll explain about Metatronics later. But Metatron is an archangel. Now, I like the archangel thing. He's the guardian of the earth, actually. He's one of the twins, you know. And I like the archangel system. It seems to resonate with something in me. So I have a word with archangels as well, and you know, I seem to get a sense that there's something looking after me or guiding me. You know. So I'm just trying to explain what I do, you know. But it seemed to work, you know. I've been much happier ever since I went down there. Right, bit of science for you. This is what happens here. The sun is here, and it emits cosmic radiation. Waves of cosmic radiation. Now the way I see this is, if you take a piece of rope and stretch it out there and tie it up the other end and afflict it here, what would happen is the wavelength would be very short here, but as it got further away it would be longer. Does this make sense? Okay? And I think that's what's actually happening. As the waves come out of the sun, right, they've got an oscillation here that's very tightly packed and full of energy, very, very highly packed energy here. We come further down, and we get to gamma rays, X-rays, ultraviolet rays, the visible light spectrum, and we go this side here, infrared rays, microwaves and radio waves. That's called electromagnetic radiation. And you'll see that at this bit here, I know that some of you quite like science, so I'll put this bit here for the science. But as we get further away from the sun, representative of the higher power of the light, then the wavelength gets longer, and it becomes much more material. So as it comes down, it becomes much more material. Yeah. So just keep an eye on that. And then here we've got the human dimension, if you like. These are the visible lights that we see. And if you see here, it goes from red up to violet,